Hello and welcome to the Existential Stoic Podcast, episode 20.
Whoa!
Right, I know, 20.
That's like 2 times 10.
It is.
Or 4 times 5.
It is. I know, or 5 times 4.
Yeah, or 40 divided by 2.
I know. Or 100 divided by 5. Shit, we can do this all day.
Yeah.
All right, so today we're going to talk about how to create meaning or how to create a meaningful life. I'm Danny. I'm here with Randy.
Hey, Danny.
Hey, Randy. So, I think we all want to live a meaningful, fulfilling life, right?
Yeah. I watched a Super Bowl last night, and there was, this YouTube is putting together a day in the life thing, and they were talking about, like, what are you afraid of? And some guy was saying living a life that has no meaning or has no value or isn't noticed.
Oh, wow. Where you're not noticed, like...
Yeah.
And that
like
implies meaning.
where you didn't contribute.
Oh, okay, yeah. And that implies meaning, right?
Mm-hmm.
It implies... I think everything we do seems to be... At least in my experience, everything we do seems to be geared towards trying to understand the meaning of our existence, right? Trying to ensure that what we're doing is worthwhile, that we understand it, that it makes sense, that it's purpose-driven, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do we do that?
Well, I would say we're going to explore that in today's episode.
I hope so, right? Hopefully we'll get some answers.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, this topic, I think, has been on my mind for, I think, 2 reasons. I've been reading a lot more of the existentialists again because I'm teaching the existentialism again. So I've been doing that, and COVID the pandemic and these trying times made it a good time to read the existentialism. I felt like they went together.
Yeah.
Being trapped inside and all. And I've also been struggling with this myself a lot recently. In fact, this last week, it was very hard. I was like, I found myself kind of like, having that sinking feeling a lot where you're kind of like, you look around, but you feel sort of like detached or lost or, you know what I mean? Like where suddenly things don't make sense. And like, I know there's values in my life and there's a lot of things that I do value, but like having that broader purpose or having that broader meaning that then grants all those other values, I think, it makes them more valuable, makes them more worthwhile.
Yeah. Okay. So one thing that I do, and this, you could say that this comes from one of the worst, most retarded books on earth, but it's Begin with the End in Mind. So this was a book I had to read in college, and it was a terrible book, but people love it. It's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Oh.
Now, it's not like he came up with this stuff. He stole all these things from other people, but he's accredited with them. And it's Begin with the End in Mind. So I like to think that we're all pretty much dead. Like, ever since I started really moving forward in my life, I started from the point of, I'm dead. Essentially, we're all dead. We're here for the briefest blink of the universe. Like, the universe occurred for billions of years before us, and it'll occur for billions of years after us. We're here for this briefest blink of the universe, so essentially, we're dead.
Yeah, we are.
But there's this one brief blink of a moment where I have the opportunity to actually do something. And the choice is up to me. I don't need to make a choice. I can do nothing. Some people will choose to just do that and do nothing, and they're fine with that too. But the thing is, I don't choose that. What I choose is to actually do something, and what that thing is to find out what, what gives me long-term pleasure.
Okay, I like that. So meaning is sort of long-term pleasure, long-term engagement almost, right?
Yeah, because the meaning is derived from pursuing that long-term pleasure. Because the difficulty with pleasures and with everybody talking about following your bliss and finding your passion, all that bullshit, is that when you do that, I'm passionate about eating a ton of food and having a bunch of sex and smoking cigarettes and drinking alcohol. I'm passionate about all that stuff. But those are short-term pleasures that have very long-term ramifications.
They do, and short-term ramifications, right? I mean, I think if you do it enough, the short-term starts to get worse as well. Mm-hmm. And you're just chasing pleasure rather than living life. I think there is a distinction, right?
Yeah, but long-term pleasures, they're things that you can derive pleasure from over a long period of time. Oftentimes they're difficult up front, but in the pursuit of those, it gives your life meaning because you can look and see how you're actually accomplishing that, and you're getting closer every day, and you can say, hey, that suffering that I did, that was meaningful because that's getting me closer to my goal.
That makes sense. It's interesting. One of the things I had read just recently, because, again, teaching it, but Nietzsche has a quote where he says, in the Genealogy of Morality, he says, human beings would rather will nothingness than not will at all. So, like, to have a will, and he says, basically what he says, and this is paraphrase, he says, but to have a will, basically, the way the will works is it needs a goal. You always need a purpose, something to do. And we struggle most when we don't understand why we're willing. Essentially, we don't understand why we're doing what we're doing. That like suffering is worse when we don't understand it, when we don't understand the purpose of it. But when we have a goal, a long-term goal, like what you're talking about, right? The suffering, the trials, all of that gains meaning. Because what I'm doing now is for me, right? It's for my long-term happiness, for my life. The other thing I liked about what you said too is it reminds me of like Camus and absurdity. You know, Camus looked around and he said, you know, the life is absurd. He said, you know, there's no God. You know, all we know is that we die. You know, it's absurd that we ask these big questions about meaning when reality won't respond. It just is. And so we're sort of stuck in this life. But the one flip side of that is that, well, just like you said, right? I mean, the world's existed for billions of years. We're a blip. And the funny thing about that is what I do with my blip is entirely up to me, and it doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter at all, right? Yep. If I sit on my ass, if that makes me happy, it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
You know, if I publish 1,000 books, great. Do whatever you want, because frankly, it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. And this is the coolest thing. It doesn't matter. So since it doesn't matter, you might as well do what's good for you, what you enjoy doing. And here's the thing. So we're all creative beings. We've spoken about this before, but I think it's more than even what we realize. It's not like we're intentional creative beings, like not like we can do art and shit like that. It's like we create no matter what.
Yeah.
And it actually is to a point where we become what we think about. So if you end up thinking about a life of poverty and of suffering and of difficulty and strife and dualism and, you know, all these things, that is exactly what you will get, because you literally are a creative being, whether you accept it or not. It's like that saying, the man who thinks he can and the man who thinks he can't, they're both right.
Yeah, they are.
It's the same thing. We're creative beings, whether you believe it or not. The thing is, do you want to take that creation and create the life of your dreams, or do you want to just complain about all this bullshit and create this terrible life that you chose, but that's just what you created?
Yeah, you know what's interesting about that too, when it comes back to meaning, is, you know, in that sense, we're creative in the sense that we're constantly creating our reality, right? We're constantly constructing a world for ourselves. And it's that meaning that we then use to interpret reality. And so when we say, I'm depressed, I'm a victim, you know, all this stuff's to blame, I'm creating a world where that's going to be reinforced, right? It's going to be affirmed over and over again.
Yeah, it's the part of your brain, the reticular activating system. It's like when you buy a new car. You've never seen this car on the street before. You buy a new car, suddenly everybody has the same exact car.
Isn't that funny? Yeah, you suddenly notice it.
Yeah, it's basically because there's so much sensory input. Our brain is a deletion mechanism. We have to delete all this input, otherwise we'd be overwhelmed all the time. So we have to delete all this stuff, and then once it's in this RAS, the reticular activating system, all of a sudden your brain starts looking for that stuff, and you can find it. So basically, you can either choose poverty or riches. You can choose happiness or depression. And all of these things, once you actually start seeking that out, you'll find it. It's like the experiment we did a couple weeks ago with the writing down the best things that happened to us each day.
Yeah, writing down noticing delights, becoming more aware of it, and then you increase your positivity because you start getting yourself to recognize it more often and become self-aware. And I think this is actually probably one of the best points, right? Which is we literally create everything. We create meaning. We create the conditions of our existence. And, you know, it's funny because it is so true. This is what people talk about, the negativity loop or the positivity loop, right? You know, the idea that it's constantly self-reinforcing and you're identifying it now, so now you see it. And just like you said, the car is, I think, a great example because that happens to everybody, right? You all of a sudden, you start seeing it everywhere. And, you know, this is one of the issues why, on a sort of digression, I guess, but it's one of the issues why people have such a hard time getting rid of implicit bias, you know, when they talk about that, because those biases are a way to filter.
And what's implicit bias?
Implicit bias they're sort of internal, often unconscious biases we have about others in the world. And so they kind of actually fall in line with this, but, you know, a lot of times people will consider like certain types of racism or sexism as implicit bias, right? So
Not to mention it's so easy to go down that rabbit hole because every search mechanism we use on the internet keeps track of everything we've done, and it serves up search results
Yeah.
based on what we've searched for previously. So it actually amplifies this implicit bias.
But you're
to-
reaffirming it, and
Yeah.
then giving you more extreme examples of the same thing. Yeah. It's interesting. I think this is one of the hardest things we have. It's funny. They did a study. They took individuals because they were saying that with the internet, the access to information, right? They the hypothesis was that anybody with a high school education and access to the internet could be a good citizen, because they can make an informed decision, say, about an election, because they have all the information, right? They can access policy information. They can access everything. So they did the study, and what they found was like 98% of the people only looked at information that affirmed their own beliefs. So rather than looking and seeking out other options, they only looked for and identified what they were already thinking about.
Dude, I have the hardest time with that. So
Yeah.
I'll just give an example. Like, I love to read. Last year, Danny and I both probably read over 100 books each. And it's pretty much like, when I'm not working, I'm reading. But
It's awesome, yeah.
But the thing is, I'm constantly reading the same subjects. Like, I'm constantly reading about building businesses and about making money and about science and philosophy and things like this. And I've tried to like step outside of the boundaries to read something differently. And I'm just like, I don't care.
No.
I really don't care. Like, anything political, I
No.
try to step into that, and I really don't care, because it's really like a turd and a douche sandwich.
Yeah,
Like,
it's a waste of my time,
yeah.
right? Well, it's funny. It's like, I look at it like they're both basically the same. When you talk about politics, you have two parties that are basically the same thing, right? For most
Yeah.
people. And the funny thing is, like, I'm the same way. We both read like fantasy, sci-fi, or then a bunch of philosophy, business, and stuff like that. And that's pretty much it. Science, and for fun. I mean, it's enjoyable. It's funny on that note. I had one of my students said, like, one of her goals this year was to read 3 to 6 books. I was like, 3 to 6?
That's
Whoa!
still 3
but that's
to 6
awesome.
times what the average American reads.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it? That is one thing you should do, is read more. I think everybody should. But hey, do what you can.
Well, here's the thing: it's reading can be attributed to creating meaning in your life, because remember, like, having a meaningful life, I believe, is the progressive realization of an ideal. Like, that will give meaning to your life.
I like that way, of saying it.
Yeah, progressively realizing an ideal, which means you have to be active. You have to take agency in your life over creating something you want. And reading is one of the best ways to do that. Because every situation you'll ever encounter in your life, somebody's already gotten through it and they've written a book about it.
And what's nice about that? It's funny. I noticed that whether I'm reading fantasy, you're encountering situations where you're learning about new experiences. Even if it's a made-up world, the human part of it is still the same, right?
Yeah.
And so I think you're learning about how people interact. You're learning about different types of people. And then when you start reading other stuff in other genres that are less, fictional and more realistic, like science, business, and stuff, you're actually getting other people's. They're showing you their success, how they overcame failures, and you can prep yourself way in advance and learn that stuff ahead of time.
Yeah, I mean, they say Shakespeare wrote every story that'll ever be written. They're just done over and over. I mean,
Yeah.
how many movies do you watch that's just like the hero's journey? It's
That's
like
all it is.
somebody wants something, they encounter some difficulties, they overcome some difficulties, and then they live happily ever after.
And they go back to the normal place, but it's better. It's changed.
It's like, that's literally every movie that's sold in Hollywood. And so, but the thing is, that's part of meaning, because that overcoming the obstacle actually gives meaning to life. It's like Ganesh, the Indian god, the elephant with many hands who dances and everything like that. He's actually the overcomer of obstacles.
Yeah.
And here's another thing. So I'm listening to this book on Bruce Lee, and he talks about Taoism a lot and yin and yang. And so somebody asked him, this was actually like a Taoist master, quote unquote master, who asked him, he's like, do you believe in the strong yang or the soft yin? And Bruce Lee is like, neither. Because here's the thing, it's not just strong and it's not just soft. It's actually both and more than that. Like, they talk about with Taoism versus the American and the Western ideal of looking at life. We look at, like, how do I create meaning in my life? But actually, it's a much bigger picture in that life is the important thing, and the creation of meaning in your life is actually the thing to focus on, because that's part of the whole. This struggle, this difficult part creating meaning in your life. That's actually part of the life.
Well, that's the problem. I think a lot of times in the West, we look at everything in terms of dominating, wrestling, and tackling to the ground and beating into submission, right? We look at it like, we need to change everything rather than working in harmony with it, rather than essentially being part of the river and part of the flow and using that to our advantage. We want to work against the stream and make it then turn around and go the other way.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the problem.
It's like changing the way you look at it. Like we have all these problems in life, and then we think, oh, I have to figure out how to overcome these problems. But look at it this way. Anytime you've been trying to overcome a problem, you have problems in life.
That's true.
So what if you just stop trying to overcome problems? All of a sudden, your problems disappear.
And started to just live life.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is one of the biggest difficulties, right? Is that, we all struggle with this because we all, it's funny, like, in a weird way, we live in a sort of, I think we live in a very absurd time. Because on the one hand, we have way less struggle than we've ever had. I mean,
Dude, the world's the best it's ever been.
Exactly. Like, we don't have to, come on. When it comes to food and stuff, food's an afterthought. We don't think about food all day because we're not growing it.
Survival's an afterthought.
Yeah, survival's an afterthought.
I mean, if you live in America, you live in the richest society that's ever existed in the history of the world.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, like, survival has become an afterthought, yet all these other problems, like these bullshit problems from society, like what Epicurus would have called, like, vain desires, artificial desires, these things from social media, politics, all these dramas that constantly play out that we aren't a part of, but feel like we make it our problem, right? And you're right, when you make problems, there are problems. When you look for problems, there's problems.
Yeah. Like, if you have a bed, running water, a toilet, and a stove, you're doing better than the entire population of the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane, but it's true. It is. It's funny. One of the things that I think always interested me with creating meaning, and this probably speaks to what you were saying earlier, is, this idea that you see in existentialism a lot with authenticity, this idea of creating a unified life. That, they talk about, like, Nietzsche talks about character, giving style to one's character, and he talks about it in the sense of finding something that you unify yourself around, that gives you basically an overarching meaning, and then everything else is directed towards it. For Kierkegaard, it's faith, right? That's the epitome of, essentially the highest form of living for him. But faith becomes the reason, right? It becomes that main centerpiece or anchor of the life, and the individual's life is then defined by it, right? And for Nietzsche, I think it's more self-creative. You have to come up with that thing. It's not given to you. But I always thought that was interesting because, when you have a long-term goal, when you have something that you're working towards far down the line, it involves all these little steps along the way, right? So you have this superordinate goal, this thing that you're aiming at. All the intermediary stuff, becomes important and validated because of that larger goal. And this is the thing I've been thinking about a lot is, what gives our lives unity? What unifies who we are so that we are justified, so that we have meaning, right? Because if I figure that out, essentially, right, you figured out what gives everything else meaning. And the important thing, though, is that can also change. I think this is where a lot of people get stuck, right? Is that, they think of this thing as, well, once I define the meaning, it's fixed. But it's not, it's plastic, right? Because if we are creating it, it's still going to change potentially later as we change and develop.
Yeah, I like what you say there, because there are definitely two fallacies that we do in creating meaning with our life. So one is what you just mentioned, where we think it has to be totally fixed, which definitely is not true, because often in the times of the most meaninglessness of my life, I just look at, well, what could give my life meaning?
Yeah.
And then I start working towards that. And once I start working towards that, then I'm able to see a bigger picture and I can give it more meaning than that. And I can find more concrete definition. So that's one fallacy. The other fallacy is looking at these outliers, this like 0.001% of people like Elon Musk. Like,
yeah.
Oh, if I created PayPal and Tesla and SpaceX and was a billionaire and the richest person in the world, then my life would have meaning. That's the most retarded thing you could ever say. He's literally he's literally like one in not 9 billion people. He's like one in every person who will ever be alive ever.
Well, and you know what kills me about those kind of comparisons too is like in a way where people are taught to make them because they're constantly bombarded with these success stories. The other problem with it though is it really sort of perverts the situation because it doesn't take account of luck. It doesn't take account of timing. Like you look at Bill Gates, right, and Steve Jobs. You know, those guys. Yes, I do not deny the fact that they put a lot of work in when they were young. They did put in their due diligence, but they were also very lucky. Because they happened to be alive at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
They happened to drop out of college at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
They happened to focus at this thing at basically the right time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, other people could have done it and would have,
Right.
had it not been for they were the first.
But they were the ones doing
Yes,
it.
exactly.
And there's a saying, Lincoln says that the harder I work, the luckier I get. And I think that's really important because you need to work hard. Because eventually, you throw enough shit at the wall, eventually something will stick.
Something will stick, yeah,
And
that
also,
is true.
also, another thing I think that with this meaning and choosing people like Elon Musk or Bill Gates or any of these people is that people just can't do math. Like, they don't understand math. So these people are exceptions. They're 1 in 9 billion, okay? Well, here's a comparison. You living right now have a 1 in 100 chance of dying in a car accident.
Yeah.
All right? That means that, what is it? You're more likely to die in a car accident 90 million times before you're going to be one of them.
Yeah. But you know what the important thing is, though, I think, with saying this is not to discourage. I think the important thing is that there's so many other avenues and paths.
Oh, dude, we live in a time nowadays where you can literally live whatever life you want. But the thing is, you have to start believing that. Before anybody else believes it's true, you have to believe it's true.
I think this is the problem for people, right? I think there's two main things we keep talking about that are very difficult, that everybody struggles with, right? Because it's easy to fall off path, which is one, you have to believe in yourself. First and foremost, you have to believe in yourself. Secondly, you have to do shit. If you don't do things, nothing will change. And this is the same thing as like when we were talking about, you know, we create the world around us. We create it by interpreting it. We interpret meaning, we give things meaning. Those meanings are important. If you think of yourself as stupid, you will be stupid. If you think of yourself as, you know, confident, you'll be confident. If you believe in yourself, it will work out. But the problem is, you know, we have to put the effort in too. And I think this is where a lot of us fail, because a lot of us, I think, you know, we run into any difficulty, any struggle, and we throw on the TV, we distract ourselves with our phones, and we get derailed. And the problem with that is you just look at all this crap, all this information, you look at all these lives that are curated, that look like they're meaningful, and you make yourself feel worse. And you also distract yourself from what you could be doing. And I think this is a big problem nowadays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in creating a meaningful life, it really is something you have to work towards on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Like, I think when a lot of people choose what could give their life meaning, they see it as this thing that's finished, and they don't realize all the steps that it takes and all the time of working and just creating stuff over and over and over again that go into it. You just see this finished product and you're like, that would give my life meaning. Let's do that. They'll do it 1 day, 2 days, a week, whatever it is, and then all of a sudden it's not there immediately, so give up.
Yeah, and I think this is the problem, right? The expectation of immediacy of a finished product. But the other important thing is, if you look at it, it's never finished. You know, I think this is the other issue, right? We imagine these lives. We look at, like, people look at, I think, you know, Elon Musk, for instance, right? But I think they look at him and they envy it because of the money. But he keeps doing shit.
Yeah.
He hasn't stopped. He could stop. He could have stopped. He could have stopped 2 decades ago.
Yeah.
He could have quit. He could have sat on his couch and fucking watched TV every day and bought absurd things all the time.
Dude,
constantly.
not only that, but the risks that he's taken to get where he is are extraordinary. Like, he created PayPal, something we use every day, and then when he sold PayPal, he literally dumped everything into creating Tesla. All right, he dumped so much money in that he actually had to borrow money in order to pay his rent.
Yeah.
Like, he literally went all in. And then from that success, he went into SpaceX. And it's just like, the risks that he's taken to get where he is are extraordinary risks compared with what most people would even try doing. Like, most people won't even try starting a business because they're like, what if I fail?
But I think this is the other important thing, right? He was willing to dump everything in and take a risk. And he was willing to take a chance on himself, believing that he would succeed. Mm-hmm. That if you put it, I mean, you know, the funny part is like, if you put enough effort in, you will succeed.
Yeah.
It might not be at first. And, you know, it's funny, there's a great show, Planet Money on NPR. They have a special episode thing called How I Built This, and they interview people that created businesses. They interviewed the girl that created Lara bars, those nutrition bars and stuff. For instance, you know, a bunch of different companies. And what's interesting is when they talk about starting up the business, I mean, all of these people have no money. They're desperate. They're looking for these, but they know that they know their idea is valid. They know it will work, and they're committed to it, and they're willing to put everything in and work 80, 90-hour weeks if they have to make it work. But then once it works, and then we look at them and we go, oh, what a success, you know, blah, blah, blah. It looks so easy, but it's really not. It takes so much effort.
But all you need is one home run.
Yeah.
This is why the thing where the harder I work, the luckier I get is meaningful. Because literally, if you do enough stuff, eventually something will work.
It will, yeah.
Like, my most successful business right now is not because I knew it was going to be a success. I actually started it just for fun.
Yeah.
But it was just because I was throwing enough shit against the wall, and eventually something stuck. I was at the right place at the right time, and I was doing the right thing, and it just took off.
And I think that's, you know, it's funny. At the end of the episode, of all those episodes, they always ask, what percent of this do you think is hard work and what percent is luck? And every single one of the people contributes luck to more. Even though they worked their asses off, they still identify that it was the right time and place.
Because here's the thing, it's the combination of two. It's when hard work and luck meet. Like, you have to be working really hard, and then you're lucky because you were at the right place at the right time.
Exactly.
But had you have not been working really hard first, and you were struck by that luck, you would have missed it.
Yeah.
Like, that's all the opportunities you see in your life where you're like, oh, had I have just done that, or had I have been there, or had I have invested in that. That's when luck struck you, but you weren't doing the hard work that's part of the equation.
You never followed through with the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's interesting. We talked about this before, the idea of, you know, looking at the universe as being on our side, as working with us.
Oh, totally.
And I think, you know, part of that is also putting in effort. When you put in effort, the universe does work with you because you are that's the whole point, right? It's not a fixed thing. It's like, if you're doing nothing, the universe will seem against you. Because you're doing nothing, you're complaining, you feel like a victim, it will be interpreted that way. But once you put in effort and start working towards something, you'll see the universe sort of work with you because you're doing it, right?
Yeah, like, the universe actually wants you to be very successful and wealthy. I mean, look at the universe. It's something that just creates life, and its life creates life. And if you go look anywhere, it's just more and more life. It's just this infinite that keeps on growing. And you're part of that. And it wants you to be successful and wealthy, because in order for you to actually be the fullest expression of yourself, you need to be successful and wealthy. But the thing is, basically, we need to get out of our own way.
We do.
Like,
and I
we
think
bottleneck ourselves.
we really do. And I like what you said there too, the idea of the fullest expression of yourself. Because one of the things I love about all these philosophies, and it's funny because you see it in so many self-help books now, and these are ideas that have been around forever. But this idea of realizing yourself as a whole person, realizing your full potential, however you want to say it. The reality is, it's about doing new things. It's about trying new things, overcoming obstacles, and every time you overcome something, you're realizing another thing you're capable of, a new power, a new ability, right? You're making yourself something in the world. An easier way to say that is you're exercising agency.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, agency is, I think, you know, really the critical thing here is agency, because if you have a goal and you are willing to work towards it and put the effort in, and you're going to have good days and bad days, but if you do that, you will see results, because it's impossible not to. The only way it's impossible not to see results is to do nothing. Literally. Because even if those results are good or bad, they're still positive because they're still something. And I think, you know, I've been thinking about this a lot. You know, we convince ourselves to do nothing because it's comfortable, because we understand the situation, even if we're miserable.
We're afraid of failing.
We're afraid of failing. We're afraid of succeeding because we wouldn't know what to do with the success, right? And so people do stupid things like they'll play the lottery with these crazy odds because they don't even really intend to win, right? It's like
you're more likely to die in a car accident 1,000,000 times than to win the lottery.
you're more likely to get hit by lightning like 7 times in the same spot, I think, or something absurd.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
But people play it because it's the easiest thing there. But
We know it
thing-
is. It's easy, and it's. I think, you know. I think it's easy, but it's also, you know, you're not going to win, so it's easy to be like, oh well,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Same thing going on again.
Yeah, one more thing to complain about.
Yeah.
But another thing that I like is this fear of failure, because the only way you can legitimately fail is if you quit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because otherwise, it's just feedback. Like, the most cliche thing is Edison, you know, trying 10,000 times to make a light bulb.
Yeah.
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 Well, he failed 10,000 times, but the thing is, he didn't fail because he didn't quit. He just kept on going, because there's failure and feedback look identical.
They do.
It's just what you do with them. Like, it doesn't matter if you get knocked down 10 times as long as you get up an 11th time.
Yeah, because ultimately the success happens eventually. It will.
It happens after getting knocked down.
But I think this is also our skewed conception really of failure and success, of what it means, right? We have this idea that we have to succeed the first time, but it doesn't make any sense because life is an ongoing process. I mean, life is about living, and we just have to keep, I think that we just have to keep trying at it.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, like, we will find meaning, we will find value by just trying new things until we find something that's worthwhile for us to keep doing.
Yeah. And like setting expectations. Like there's this, a lot of different things will say that you won't actually reach your goal of success until you've made up your mind that you're going to do whatever it takes to get there.
Yeah.
Because until that point, you're going to stop, you're going to quit. But once you've made up your mind that you're going to do whatever it takes, it doesn't matter. You're going to get knocked down. It's going to quote unquote fail a million times. You're going to encounter difficulty. You're going to struggle. You're going to feel terrible. But once you've made up your mind that you're going to do whatever it takes, the universe gets out of your way.
It does, yeah, it will. And you know, it's funny too, because I find myself in this situation a lot, you know, like I've been pushing myself to do what I want and to try and get where I want to go. And I have bad weeks where, like, you know, it feels terrible, but I know if I just keep at it, it will work. And so I keep doing it because I know the worst thing I could possibly do is stop. Because then I'm just stuck in this fucking situation, and I don't want to be stuck in this situation. And I think that's the important thing. You know, once we get moving forward, we realize how much better it is to produce, to do things. I think, you know, nothing feels worse than doing nothing. It really is the worst.
Yeah. It's funny because we're so much more comfortable just sitting in what we know than to actually stepping outside of that and trying something new. They're like, I know it's my shitty diaper, but
yeah.
but it's mine and I'm comfortable in it.
It's my it's my shit. I'll sit in it.
Yeah,
you know?
So I'll just sit. And I was just talking with Danny about some, like, an opportunity that came up in my life where I can, you know, like right now I don't enjoy doing some of the things that I'm doing, but it's comfortable.
Yeah.
You know, I've made it comfortable. And to step outside of that, it would be uncomfortable. But really, to step outside of it, that's the creation of the life that I want. So I'm almost like, I owe it to myself to actually do that.
To try, right? And to take a chance. And look, the funny thing is, you know, if you take the chance, you learn things along the way. And even if it doesn't work out, it's okay.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it. You know, it's funny. I think about this a lot too. You know, when I was younger, because I mean, we're both approaching 40. And, you know, I remember when I was younger being a lot more concerned about the world, and now I'm just not, because I realize it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's a lie we tell ourselves that, you know, other people's opinions, you know, all this stuff makes a difference in how I live my life. It's my life. Shouldn't I live the life I want when I only have this little blip? What's the point of doing something else? You know, I think this is the problem. We get so caught up in, like, these expectations, obligations, and ideas about what we should be doing that we don't even pay attention to what we are doing and to what we want to do. And I think, you know, when people talk about meaning and creating meaning or living a meaningful life, I think what they're really struggling with is being themselves and taking a chance on themselves. Because, you know, realistically, there is nothing stopping them except themselves. And this is the hardest thing, right? And we make up so many excuses with obligations and this and that, and I have to do this and that. Well, there's lots of ways to do those things usually. You know, I mean, sometimes you have to, you know, sometimes you have to put hours in after work. Sometimes, you know, you have to make that goal work, and it's not impossible.
Yeah.
It's interesting though.
Yeah.
Why do we all struggle with it so much?
Well, because it's hard.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, humans were wired to not do difficult things. Because we're wired to be lazy.
Yeah, we are.
But the thing is, you can either use laziness to your detriment or to your benefit. And it's finding out how to use laziness to your benefit that's going to help you out in the long run. Because using laziness to your detriment, this is doing things like just spending all the time on social media, you know, just getting home and just hitting the bong.
We know it,
doing all
yeah.
this stuff.
Or the fact that, like, you know what's funny? I was thinking about this the other day too. The fact that, like, binge watching has become a thing that people talk about.
Yeah.
Like, where I don't watch a show weekly. I watch the entire 24-hour season in one fucking shot.
Yeah.
Like, that's insane.
Yeah.
Like, when you think about it.
It's crazy.
But there's time, and the funny thing is there is time for everything. I think, you know, we put so much pressure on ourselves, and we get so caught up in, like, these ideas that we forget that there is time to work on things.
Yeah, if you're still alive, if you're listening to this, if you're breathing, there's still time. Like,
There's always time.
I mean, everybody eats KFC. Colonel Sanders didn't actually get around to making KFC till he was in his 60s.
Yeah, I think the worst lie we tell ourselves is it's too late.
Yeah.
That is the worst lie, because that will keep you stuck in the same position forever.
Well, it's getting, like I was saying earlier, it's getting out of our own way. We have so many excuses. I'm too young. I'm too old. I'm not smart enough. It's too hard. I can't do this.
I can't learn that, right?
Yeah.
Like anything.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the possibilities. I always like that with Camus and stuff, the idea that the possibilities are literally inexhaustible.
Mm-hmm.
Human life, and that's what I think, when people talk about like self-creation, I think that's what these philosophers meant. It is creating yourself in the sense that there is limitless possibility. There is so many ways to live your life, to interpret reality, so many ways to do things, and it's just a matter of finding what works for you. Which one is right for you? And it could be many. Mm-hmm. And that's the other fun thing, is that it's not fixed. Nothing's fixed, and I think you just have to put effort in to find it.
And here's the thing, like, it's waiting for you.
Yeah.
I remember this quote when I was like at my deepest, darkest moments, that what you are seeking is also seeking you.
No, I like that one.
It's like this destiny that you really want is also trying to find you, and you need to do the things. Like, what does a person who has that destiny do? And you need to figure out what that is and start doing that. And then that destiny is going to try really, really hard to find you, just as hard as you're trying. So the harder you try, the more quickly and the more likely it'll happen.
I like that too, because it also suggests too being more self-aware and kind of recognizing, what is it do I like? What do I really like doing? What are the things that I'm really happen to be drawn to? Because those are going to be the things that are probably going to help me find meaning, right? If I really like writing, if I really like, doing videos or something, if I really like computer programming, if I really like science, what are these things that like can help me sort of find my path in life and figure out which path works for me? I think that's,
it's like what would give meaning to my life?
Yeah, exactly. Right?
I always go back to this idea that I'm already dead, because it's like I'm already dead. And so, but I'm gifted this short amount of time on Earth. Well, what would actually give meaning to my life? What if I would actually make my life meaningful? And it's just pursuing that stuff on a regular basis.
Yeah. And I mean, it's funny because we make this problem so much harder than it really is.
I think it's because we think there's this like ultimate meaning. Like, we have to have this ultimate,
Well, I think you're right though. I think it goes back to, look, you go back long enough in society and there was one religious point of view, a small community. People had this idea about how the world worked, and it was pretty fixed. And now the doors have opened. They've swung open. Everything's possible. It's great because it means we can do anything. It's also really hard because my views, my values are not going to necessarily be validated by everyone else. And this is the difficult thing, I think, is standing on your own. That's what a lot of us are afraid of, is that to live a meaningful life that's truly meaningful for you, to put yourself out there and do those things, you have to be willing to stand on your own. And that is hard because I can't look at my neighbor and say, hey, they value the same shit, I must be doing it right.
Yeah. And also what you were saying with you can do anything, but also realizing you can't do everything.
Yes.
Like, you have to say no to a lot of stuff to be able to say yes to some stuff. And this is really important because in order to really accomplish anything, you have to focus on it intently. Like, if you're trying to do 10 things, you're going to fail at 10 things. But if you're trying to do one thing and you just focus on that one thing, you're going to accomplish that.
I'm really glad you brought that up because that is, one of the things I noticed that I used to do to myself a lot, and I still catch myself doing it, and it's like a trick. To make yourself feel like you're accomplishing things, you do a bunch of little things. But you do none of them, you don't commit yourself fully to any. So it's like I'm doing a lot, but I'm not really progressing on anything. And so it's easy to be like, oh, I can't do it, it won't work. Mm-hmm. Because what you're really doing though is you're distracting yourself.
Yeah.
You're doing productive stuff, you're just still distracting yourself, right?
Yep.
And it's like, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I heard this woman talk about prioritizing. So basically we have like an unlimited amount of stuff we need to do in our life. And it's basically prioritizing stuff into three categories, A, B, and C. All right? A is the most important stuff that you need to get done. B is the stuff that you kind of need to get done, but it's not very important, it's not very urgent. And C is the stuff that's not really important or urgent or anything like that. And she's like, prioritize your stuff into 3 categories, A, B, and C, and then throw out C.
Yeah.
But the thing is, C is what we end up spending the most time on.
It is,
because it's
yeah.
it's like the urgent but not important stuff. It's the immediate pleasure type of stuff. It's all of that stuff that'll distract us from actually spending our time and energy on A and maybe B.
Yeah, and I think it's important what you said too. We have to learn how to say no. Because I see it happen so often with people I know where, they let work dictate their whole life because they're constantly on the phone, they're constantly being emailed, texted late at night, and you have to say no to that stuff at some point. If you want to pursue other things, you have to say no. You have to say no to get-togethers. You have to say no to other things. You have to really focus your life, and it is not easy.
Yeah.
Because I think we also want to, we feel like, in connection and community, there is also meaning, I think. And this is the thing that I think most of us grapple with, is that there's meaning in a lot of things. But to have a meaningful life, we need to have some sort of thing we're working towards. And that takes effort. It takes time. It takes some commitment, right? But I think it is possible. I mean, we've mentioned a lot of great stuff today, I think. The biggest ones being, acting, doing something, trying things out, focusing, right? And saying no, I think are important.
Yeah, definitely. So if somebody's feeling like their life is meaningless, what can they do today to really feel fulfilled, like their life is full of meaning?
Well, I think if somebody is feeling really meaningless right now, I would say, look, uncertainty is not a bad thing. I think we all feel uncertain at times. And sometimes you just have to own that. The other thing is, make a goal. It doesn't have to be long term, it can be short term. But do something. One thing. Just pick something and focus on it and do it. Because when you realize you can do that one thing, anything else becomes possible. Because it's just more of the same, right? It's just more doing small steps. And I think, sometimes for myself, that works the best is, when I'm really struggling, I will do one small thing. Because I'm like, look, I can do that. And then I can put that effort in each day towards something bigger, something grander, something that I really want to work on.
Yeah, yeah. And I would say, if you really want to have some meaning right now, if you're feeling meaningless and you really want to have some meaning, first off, if you're ever, thinking about offing yourself, contact the suicide prevention
Obviously,
hotline, 1-800-APE-TALK. But if you really want to feel meaning right now, start practicing some gratitude.
Yeah.
So, look at the good things that you've done in your life and be grateful for them, and the good relationships that you have or may have had, and be grateful for them. The people who have really made a difference in your life, whether they're still alive or not. Being grateful for that and the meaning that you and them were able to spend together.
Yeah.
The time you were able to spend together. And the things you can accomplish in life. And then once you're grateful for things that you have now, look out into your future and start being grateful for the things that you want, that they've already happened.
Yeah. And being grateful for the fact that you have the time to do it. I think that's crucial. Being gratitude, and also, like we talked about before, positivity. So small delights, focusing on little pleasures. Those things together, I think, can really build your energy. They can build your positivity and make you more able to act in the world and overcome difficulties. Because those things are always there. You can always be grateful. You can always find something positive, right? And I think if you focus on that, life isn't that bad. And one of the most important things I think too, if you're struggling with meaning, is get rid of the fucking distractions. Turn off the news. Get off social media for a day or two and see how you feel. I think that can really, it's amazing how much that can improve our lives, because I think we spend so much time on it distracting ourselves and stressing about things that don't help us move forward.
Yeah.
They really hinder us.
Yeah. Go on a digital detox for a day.
Yeah.
No television, no computer, no cell phone, no social media. Just do that for a day and just see what happens.
Spend time with yourself. Yeah. Write down goals. Write down just anything. Whatever, a story. Do something. But just try it and see. I think you'll feel better. It's amazing.
Yeah, they've shown that any screen-related activity, you feel worse afterwards. Whereas any non-screen related activity, you feel better afterwards.
Yeah.
And look at how many screens we're all carrying around with us. We have our laptop, we have our tablet, we have our cell phone, we have a second cell phone, we have a TV.
A smartwatch.
Yeah, smartwatch. All these screens, if you let go of those, you'll be much happier.
You will, yeah.
Cool.
I think that was good.
Yeah, I think that should fill everybody's life up with some meaning. But I challenge you to actually find what will make your life meaningful and pursue it as if your life depends on it.
Yeah,
Because
really.
it really does.
Yeah, really put the effort in. Because look, the fact of the matter is no matter how you look at it, you have this life now.
And you're going to be dead within
Yeah.
100 years.
Yeah.
It's going to be over. So might as well take the time that you have now to actually do something
Don't
meaningful
waste
to
it.
you.
Yeah, do not waste it. Put in the effort. And really, if you like the show, please subscribe, share with your friends. It helps a lot. We appreciate it. Yeah.
And we'll see you next time. Make sure to listen this week for our quick fix, a short little 10-minute episode to help you fix one little issue in your life.
Oh, nice. Yeah, midweek.
I'll see you later, Danny.
See you later, Andy.